Hey, everybody. Welcome to the first episode of Masters of Process. My name is Phil Lankin. I'm the co-founder and CEO of No Code Ops, and I'm joined by my co-host, Blake. Blake, you want
Hey.
to introduce yourself?
Yeah, I do RevOps and no code for Process Street.
Woo woo, process. And today we are joined by two of my darling, good, great friends in the no-code space. Curtis Cummings and Michael Gill, who both work in no-code infrastructure at OnDeck. Curtis and Michael, welcome to the show. Oh, Michael,
Welcome,
it's weird
guys.
calling you Michael.
Yeah, you can call me Gill. Either
Yeah,
one.
we're gonna revert back to Gill. We're gonna roll that back version-wise.
There you go.
Cool. Welcome. So in today's episode, we're going to be talking about how to build a no-code operational culture from day one, which we're super jazzed about. So Curtis and Gill, y'all want to tell us a little bit about OnDeck and your roles there?
Sure, I can start with that. So I've been on deck for about 10 months, which is an eternity in startup timelines. But I am currently leading the no-code infrastructure team, which helps build all the building blocks that the rest of the ops orgs and everyone at OnDeck uses to build their no-code MVPs and products. And my previous background is as a software engineer, which gives me a unique insight into no-code. I kind of found no-code about two and a half years ago, and I've loved it ever since.
Amazing. And Gill, you want to tell us a little bit more also about your role and then just OnDeck as a whole, the mission, all that jazz?
Sure, absolutely. So yeah, I also work with no code infrastructure. Actually, Curtis brought me in to OnDeck just about 4 months ago, back in May. So I'm working with him on that. And before that, I was a CTO and a developer. Before that, ran my own dev agency and all that jazz. But found the no code space a couple of years ago. Fell in love with the approach, and then here we are. So with OnDeck, what we're doing, no code is definitely in the DNA of OnDeck. And so our whole goal is to continue to harden and scale no code so that we can continue to use it really as we grow at a very rapid pace. And we have been growing like crazy.
Yeah, I keep reading more and more about different cohorts y'all are launching. For those not familiar, OnDeck is let's call it virtual learning in the cloud with peers on different topics. Did I do that right? Is that a fair picture of OnDeck?
Yeah, it's constantly evolving.
Curtis
but
is like, no, it wasn't. I'm gonna do it better.
Yeah, so OnDeck is basically a modern education institution built for the internet. Different cohort-based courses. Some of them are annual. So if you are like chief of staff or you're a designer or something, you can opt into these communities and have kind of a lifelong membership into them where there's constantly talks, there's masterminds, there's all sorts of programming. And the really exciting stuff that we've been able to put on is when these fellowships kind of meet and cross the boundaries of their fellowship. So you've got no coders that are helping people trying to found companies who are getting funded by the angels who are there, who are getting resources from designers and PMs and customer success. So they're what we like to call it internally is all these flywheels. So one fellowship usually is the source into another fellowship. So yeah, we've got all these flywheels spinning, and yeah, it's a market-driven network is what the fancy term for that is.
I love it. Blake, have you had any friends, or I don't think you've gone through OnDeck, but have you had any buddies go through it?
No, but there's so many different really awesome programs out there now, like OnDeck. I mean, OnDeck is really one of the best ones out there for it. That I've had a lot of friends who have gone through things similar to that. I've gone through a couple of things similar to that as well. Although I wish I went through that as well. That sounds awesome.
You missed out, man. I was in the OnDeck No Code Fellowship 1, and it was unreal, unbelievable. Definitely helped me go from 0 to 1. And by the end of it, I was doing my side hustle full time as a startup. So in the no code space. So can't complain. Big fan. Sweet. So building a no code culture from day one. The thing that got me the most excited about talking to you both is that OnDeck is one of these companies that I've seen use no code from the beginning, scale with it through like a $20 million round. Like all the infrastructure seems to still be built on no code, but it seems that you also empower your employees to also experiment and use no code. So I'd love to learn a little bit more about how that works. Like, how are people internally empowered to use no code in new ways?
Yeah, I can start off with that because I was there earlier when we were much smaller. So Gill mentioned that no code's kind of in the DNA of OnDeck, and that's because it started as a very scrappy startup with 3 people, and none of them were engineers, so they had to use no code tools. And as they started to scale and bring on more operations people and we're rolling out more programs, they just continued to use that no code. And then once we started growing a little bit more, we really got executive buy-in to continue using no code. So it's pretty unique what we're doing. The product, we have a full product engineering team. So there's a lot of our product that is in code, like a traditional startup running product organization. But we're also enabling everyone at the company to build product using no-code tools. And once they hit something we've coined internal product market fit is when we go and harden it, or sometimes it gets added to
I
the
love
code
that
stack.
term. So I have to call that out. That is so beautiful from an operator's perspective. Internal product market fit. What does it look like when someone hits that internally with like a no-code MVP they built for an internal process?
It basically means so one unique thing at OnDeck is almost nothing gets coded until it's had an MVP done in no code. So it might be V0 and V1 are both in no code tools. And then once internal product market fit basically means like either it's hit like a critical mass for number of programs using it internally. So like how much exposure does it have to fellows? Or it might be that we've developed something that's very strategic and we want to bring it like to the next level, whether that's hardening it or making sure it's part of our directory product or some of the other internal code products we have. So yeah, it really means it's the exact same thing as product market fit for a startup. It's just we're viewing it as these different products. Their customers are the fellowships, and maybe if it's an internal tool, it's the internal team. And once they've hit critical mass and it's actually doing what we need it to do, that's when we go about hardening it or coding it.
Wow. What are some of those tools that you guys are using on a typical basis to build those V0 and V1 MVPs?
So it really depends. It's sort of the Wild West in that sense, because we've optimized for the user experience or the customer experience, which means that those that are closest to the customer can use pretty much whatever tools they want. So, I mean, the main ones are, Typeform, Airtable, Zapier, all the ones that you're familiar with. But in reality, there's like a whole other layer of tools where you can kind of just grab whatever off the shelf and make it work. And I think that's the special thing about OnDeck, and that's what kind of stood out to me when I first came in, is it does depend on what you optimize for. And when you optimize for that customer experience, the first concern is not, wait, what tools are you using? Or wait, has engineering approved that? There's not even this setup of you have to go through engineering to get your product launched. It's just get it launched, get it working, do what you need to do, and then engineering will be there later to enable you, and as Curtis said, help take you from V0 or V1 to something more sustainable for the future.
Freaking awesome. So, I can hear folks in my head. I can't actually hear people in my head.
We need to call some help for you, Phil.
Yeah,
I don't know if we need to continue this recording anymore. Okay.
So I hear the folks out there, just saying, well, this all sounds well and good that non-technical people can use whatever tools they want to serve the customer. But what happens when stuff breaks or someone goes off process or someone starts a really interesting process that leaves the company? where is the safety security structure of something like an engineering culture that is coded? And so I'd love to hear from y'all, like, what do you do to I guess allow the Wild West, right? Allow folks to build and serve the customer without the constraint of like waiting for dev resources, but do it in a way that is scalable, safe, secure, repeatable. I'd love to just learn more about that.
Yeah,
So
I can touch on that.
Oh, sorry.
I'll touch on it first, and I'll let you. No-code infrastructure is the way we do that. So this team didn't exist 3 months ago, and it spun up because we wanted to solve this problem. It definitely was Wild West like 6 months ago. It was people using personal Slack connections to wire up Zapier flows and stuff like that. So if someone left, that Zapier flow now broke. We're getting a lot better with that, and that's why we actually have a head of IT that is part of our infrastructure team, and he's going through and like properly setting us up with service accounts and things like that, so that we're doing things through Slack apps and bots instead of personal accounts, and that's just scaled to all the different tools as well. So if one person leaves, everything doesn't tumble. But then also there's a amazing ops internal training document that is spun up, which isn't our team, it's the ops team, but they basically codify all the learnings from what they're building in no code to give to, like, it's part of your onboarding. You take 2 to 3 weeks to train up on no code tools. And then when you do hit problems, that's when the no code infrastructure team kind of steps in and can either help you in engineering, because everyone on the no code infrastructure team's an engineer. We're also no coders. And then, so we do day-to-day support, and we do like bigger building blocks. So if someone's like, I just can't find a tool that does this one particular thing, we'll work with IT to figure out if we've got something already that someone's used, or we'll just spin up something, or we'll code something to help unblock them.
Amazing. And by the way, if people listening take one thing away from this podcast, please, if you work at a company and you're using Zapier, don't use your personal Gmail or Slack connections when doing things. Because when you go, those go.
Well, unless you want, job security where you're like, listen, I got the keys. You better not.
You could black out the whole thing, yeah, and just hold the company hostage. But, we didn't tell you to do that, though. Yay, good corporate citizenship.
Didn't hear it here. Yeah.
Gill, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, one of the other things that again, stood out to me when I first joined OnDeck is to help with what you just described, documentation. OnDeck has some of the craziest documentation that I've seen. Like, our Notion is is almost bursting at the seams. So everything is heavily documented. I feel like all the processes, it's all open to anyone in the company. There are no, there's no pride of ownership. There are no walls where you have to get access to certain things to find out what other teams are doing. It's all readily available to everybody there. And so if somebody leaves or a process changes, we have documentation that kind of covers that, and that's pretty rare for early startups, especially ones that are growing really fast. That's usually the first thing to suffer or lack is documentation, and so that's something that stood out to me. Also, with as Curtis mentioned, with what we're doing with no code infrastructure, we do make sure we have an underlying sort of stable layer. So we still have a traditional relational database. We have automation processes that copy data from one place to the other and make sure that we have redundancy and stability built in, so that if something breaks or a third-party tool decides to shut down or go a different direction or whatever, it's not a big blow to our systems because we have some of that redundancy built in.
So you mentioned Notion there and the documentation levels that you guys have. I'm interested because this is a problem that I face, that a lot of people in the space generally are facing. At what level are you having people document when they are creating something new or when they are just editing something that already exists? At what point are you making sure that people are documenting that? And do you have automated ways to do that, or is that purely just a culture thing, or is it both?
That is that's a culture thing. So OnDeck is globally distributed, remote first in like the furthest extreme possible. So very few meetings. And if you do have a meeting, you better have a Notion doc that has the full agenda laid out with all the call outs and stuff. And it's expected that before you go into the meeting, you've read the agenda and you've like gone up to speed on any like background that's been linked to other Notion docs. So yeah, it's mostly culture. It's being beat into everyone's head that when you change a process or when you've finally figured out a process and now it's working and you're rolling it out, part of that rollout is making sure you've got that procedure in the right spot in Notion.
Amazing.
Yeah, and I think there are natural elements to being a fast-growing startup too that help with that. Like everyone is so busy and has so many things on their plate. There's a natural incentive to want to not have to explain something multiple times, right? So, and by the time you've answered the same question twice, guaranteed you've already recorded a Loom and thrown it into a Notion doc that you can just reference to send to somebody the next time, so you don't have to explain things multiple times. There's that's part of that culture of just wanting to streamline the sort of information sharing.
Truly, no code is made up of productive, lazy people, I think. Yeah. It's all founded in the sense of, God, I really don't want to deal with this.
Yeah. It is I think it is the externalization of structured procrastination.
That's a good way to say it. Yeah.
It felt pretty good to say. That was like a good sentence. So for everyone listening, this is Masters of Process. We're in episode 1 with Curtis Cummings and Michael Gill of On Deck. My name is Philip Lankin. I'm the CEO and co-founder of No Code Ops. We are a community and newsletter for no code operational professionals. And Blake, do you want to talk for a second about Process Street?
Sure. Yeah. So my name is Blake Bailey. Again, as I mentioned, I do RevOps, customer success, special projects here at Process Street. Process Street is a process management tool. Allows you to document your processes, but also actually hook them up to other services through automation and to be able to track actively what's happening at the very moment across all your processes, and then also report on them by being able to export that information wherever you need.
Amazing. Very on topic for process documentation.
It's why I got questions on it, because it's kind of my thing. So, yeah.
I love it. Fun question. Tell me or tell us about a time that something just like totally went awry with no code. I think in the community we talk a lot about how awesome it is and how fast it is and how quickly people can pick it up. But we don't always talk about the blunders. I know I've had quite a few. I'd love to hear from y'all. Like, what was a blunder? How to get remedied? Yeah.
I've got 2 quick ones, and I'll let Gill, because he's probably seen some crazy ones lately. So it's sort of related to what you were getting at with people leaving the company. In the beginning, we had one particular person who had their personal Slack connection all up and down Zapier. And this is well before no code infrastructure existed. I was just a senior engineer at the time working on code stuff. That person left and we deactivated their Slack account, and we basically lost everything. Like any notification, any automation we had to do with Slack broke. And it took us basically a week to figure out like all the places and reconnect everything. And yeah, it is a huge mess, because some of those were private channels, and because that person was no longer there, there's no good way to invite like another user into that private channel. So you're like, it got crazy. And the other one that kind of impacted us recently is, this is not unique to no code, but it's something that is now impacting us a lot at scale, is when Airtable or Amazon or AWS has some downtime, like they did, I think, a day or 2 ago.
Yeah, really they just decided to Zapier or Airtable, I forget which one, decided to just like break up.
Zapier, yeah.
Yeah, that broke a lot. So we had a couple hours of Zaps firing that were just pulling no data because of what they changed with the Airtable automation. And then later that day, AWS West went down. So we lost a lot of other connectivity to tools. So yeah, it's just the reality of using cloud for a whole lot of things, and no code is very much based in the cloud. We don't self-host a whole lot. So yeah, those are the things that continue to go down for us. But yeah, we've kind of fixed that as service account problem, because now everything is done through apps or service accounts. And the downtime thing, it's hard to have like fully redundant system, but we at least have steps in place that we can use to recover from stuff like that.
One of the things I saw early on, I think it was my first month, was someone had gotten excited about Integromat and built it, I think their first scenario, and let's just say it wasn't the most efficient scenario. And so I think we were maybe halfway through the month and we blew through all of our billing credits and had gone over our limit, when normally it would have lasted us all month. So a little learning opportunity. All names have been
changed to protect the innocent on that one.
Exactly. Yeah. I also, during the hiring process, I heard stories of, the early days when someone accidentally deleted a whole Airtable and things like that. So, that can happen when there's full access.
The joys of access rights, right, Blake?
Oh yes, yeah. It's a pretty common thing that I deal with too. It's not so fun. Yeah. Actually, it's funny. It's painful to even talk about, but I have one of these stories as well.
Oh, do it.
Oh yeah. So basically, I went on paternity leave. I got back from paternity leave about 2 weeks ago.
Woo-woo!
And
Congrats,
exactly.
Blake.
Thank you. So anyways, I before I went on paternity leave, did the whole I spent a good month or two just prepping, training everyone, trying to make sure that everything was going to be okay. And then one of my last things that I did is that I basically set up an automation so that when I knew that I was going to be leaving, that it was going to do things like block off my calendar. It was going to message all of my main contacts. I need to let them know. Our internal team, I need to let them know. Basically just set all the things that you would have to do as soon as you go on paternity leave to make sure that you're good for while you're gone for 6 weeks. And so I automated it. And what I did is in my head, I was thinking that, oh man, I'm going to have to all of a sudden drop everything and just go to the hospital. I'm not going to have time to do these things. So I got to make it really easy. Well, I set it all up. It's all good to go. I'm like, all right, this is going to be awesome. I wake up the next morning and it had fired by itself. So calendar's blocked. Entire company thinks that I'm out on paternity leave. It messaged 80 people, 80 customers, things like that, to be like, hey, I'm on paternity leave now. I wake up and I just have 100 emails of people being like, congratulations, oh my God. 50 different Slack messages, people all excited, oh wow, this is amazing. And then I had to, tail between my legs, just be like, so I even thought I
taking the time.
I called my wife and was just like, "How do you?"
My wife was in labor for 2 weeks. Weird.
Yeah. I was like, "How do you feel? Can we just do this now? Can we just?" Yeah. No. So then I had to spend an entire day undoing an automation, which is the worst feeling in the world. Is when you build an automation to make things easier, and then you got to undo it, and it's just. So that's my story, and I hope I never.
You should have used an approval step in Process Street.
I rebuilt it. I rebuilt it like the nuclear football, with the biscuit. I had a very specific code word that I had to send to somebody else, and then they had to do something to trigger it. So it was a double. Yeah, it was. Yeah, that was the Joint Chiefs of. Yeah, exactly.
I love it. So Curtis and Gill, blunders and fun stuff aside, I have the utmost respect for OnDeck pushing the envelope on this front. And I think as more companies are forming and growing super fast, and the need for technical talent obviously is high, and the demand still remains fairly low. We're going to see more and more, startups using no code, not only for their external product, for what their customers are using, but also for a lot of their internal processes from day one. What would be, your recommendations for operational folks internally who are, maybe like the first one or two operations folks at a startup starting to experiment with and use these systems before, all the scale happens? Like from day one, what would you recommend?